Right here.
I think I'll do my welcome. Good morning, everyone. Is this working? Yeah. Welcome to First Parish in Needham, a Unitarian Universalist congregation of humanists, theists, atheists, agnostics, seekers, and interfaith families. I'm Phil Lyons, co-chair of the worship committee. I use the pronouns he, him, and his. You can learn more about all that's happening at First Parish by going to our website, uuneedham.org, and signing up for our weekly email newsletter, or by following us on social media. This morning's service and many past and future services are available on YouTube at our First Parish Needham channel. Here at First Parish, we covenant to live out our shared values of the inherent worth and dignity of every person, respecting the earth and co-creating beloved community. Whoever you are, whoever you love, whatever your background or identity, whatever your age or stage, whether you walked or rolled in, and wherever you're participating from, you are welcome here. This morning, we're honored to have Tad Staley leading our worship service as we consider what spirituality means to us and how our participation in this faith community enriches our lives. Tad Staley has been a member of First Parish for 14 years. He received his Master's of Divinity degree from Andover Newton Theological Seminary, which included serving as intern minister at Plymouth Congregational Church in Belmont. Here at First Parish, Tad facilitated a small group ministry group for 7 years, co-facilitated the Big Questions Forum for 4 years, and chaired the Continuing Education Committee for 3 years. He now serves on the strategic task force that is researching and facilitating discussions on prospective paths forward for First Parish, which he's chosen as our theme for today. He and his wife, Monica, a kindergarten teacher at Broadmeadow School, raised 4 kids in Needham and are now grandparents to 6. Welcome again to everyone here in the building and online. We're so glad you're here to join together in worship and community this morning.
The chalice lighting this morning is from Ed Lane. The greatest gift is a portion of thyself. May the light of this chalice symbolize the gift that you bring to this service to be shared and carried home in the heart of another.
Is this on now?
In the Unitarian Universalist tradition, the covenant is a set of promises the membership of a congregation strives to honor with one another and out in the world. Though we still cannot all gather together in person during this time, we strive to live up to these promises every day. So please say along with me the words of our First Parish Covenant as found in your orders of service. We gather as a loving community to serve and comfort one another. We gather as a diverse community to support each other in our search for spiritual truth. We gather as a service community to live our beliefs through action and care for our world.
As you can see, we're making this up as we go along. Different layout. And special thanks to Billy and Phil for working really hard on my idea to have this in a circle rather than in linear. Okay. Well, I'm going to actually begin an introduction. I'm going to do it sitting down, so I'm going to move the microphone. So bear with me just for a minute, please. The advantage of a summer service is we get to experiment. And in a way, this is an experiment to see what it feels like to be in a circle instead of arrayed, sort of all facing in one direction to some authority figure. I don't like being an authority figure, so I'd rather be part of the circle. This also helps because as part of the service, we're going to have an interactive portion where there's a little bit of, polling and a little, people raising their hands and offering their insights. So it's easier to do this way as well. But I'd like to give a little bit of a context for, as an introduction for what this service is about. Phil mentioned the task force that's looking into where we're going. Particularly in the context of declining enrollment here and everywhere, really. And we spent the spring doing a lot of listening. Probably each of you have spoken to us, or hopefully most of you have, through dozens of interviews, through a couple or 4 interactive forums, online forums, and an online survey. We spoke to over 60 people. We heard from over 60 people, that is. And so I want to reflect a little bit on what we heard from that. This was the sort of the listening phase. The task force, as we turn the corner into September, we'll be moving into what we might call a where are we going phase, but this was the where are we phase. So I just want to reflect back a little bit, on some of what we heard. because I found that there were sort of three dynamics that were particularly interesting that I want to raise here. And I should state that these are my impressions. This isn't an official report. We'll get that in the next week or two. And so I'm speaking for myself, not on behalf of the task force. So in the first dynamic that was, that I think kind of jumps, well, the first dynamic that jumps out is one of care. It's clearly something that we do here. It's something that we're proud of, that we count on, and it's such a part of our work here that there are no fewer than 6 groups that offer care of some kind. It's care to others, like the pastoral care team, or care within a group, like the cancer support group, a member of which I am. And so it's something really important. I'd say that care is not just something we do here. It's kind of our aspirational way of being together. However, there's a subtext that a subset of people talked about a different way of thinking about care. And I'd like to read to you one quote we got from an interview. We've all been through a lot, individually and collectively, over the last few years. Can we talk about self-care and the ways in which we can support each other through our various traumas? It made me think, I think it's made the task force think, are we thinking about care broadly enough? Which is not to extend all the work that everybody's already doing, but can we think differently about this so that we can embody this in a more thoroughgoing way? The second dynamic that sort of leapt out has to do with our values. We are all, no one questions the values that we embody as part of First Parish, as part of the UUA, beautifully expressed in the principles of the Unitarian Universalist Associate. And there's something comforting about being with people whose values you share. So that was crystal clear in the feedback. However, there was a fair amount of discussion about, concern about not the values themselves, but how they're expressed, how they're conveyed. And there was maybe a hint that these values were presumed or imperative, and almost like it was dogmatic. You needed to believe this. And so I think one of the conversations that we want to perhaps have going forward, and I'll talk to it a little bit more today, is how can we honor these values, these noble values that we have as a community, and yet remain open-minded and welcoming. I won't have any answer to that, by the way, but I think it's a dynamic for us to consider. The third dynamic involves social action, another pillar of our work together. And nobody has concerns about our social action, except that maybe we don't do enough of it, even though we do quite a bit already. So that's not the concern. The concern is, there's not even a concern. What's interesting to me is that there was also, through the feedback, an interesting expression of a yearning for more spiritual content, programming, engagement. And part of the interesting tension for me, and it may be an imaginary tension, I'll get to that, is social action, outwardly focused social action versus inwardly focused sort of grounding. How do we balance those? One of the things that we heard quite often in the feedback was, in response to the question, what brought you to First Parish? The response, several people said, we were looking for a spiritual home for ourselves and our children. So the thing I want to ask today and engage with you today with is, what constitutes a spiritual home? And in what way can we engage at that level to support all the good work we're doing and the values that we embrace? So that's kind of where I want to focus today on this conversation. Thank you.
Okay, we have a reading by Mark Nebo. When Feeling Stuck. We are so achievement-oriented that we often surge right by the true value of relating to what's before us, because we think accomplishing things will complete us, when it is experiencing life that will. Yet, if we can outlast the urge to judge everything we encounter, a miracle starts to surround us, in which painting, music, poetry, running water, flowers, wind through trees, open vistas, all touch and draw out their counterpart that lives quietly within us. The 19th century poet Gerard Manley Hopkins called this inner terrain inscape. And just as no landscape can flourish without sun and water, our inscape must be irrigated and drenched with many forms of life if we are to thrive. So, when feeling stuck or disconnected from the miracle of life, as will happen to us all, try to listen, see, feel, and just take in. Try to let the energies of life stir their counterparts within you. In order to be whole, suspend your criticism, for life is not a matter of taste, but of awakening. Not a matter of finding things pleasing or disturbing, but of finding things completing. Not a matter of liking or disliking, but of opening up the geography of one's soul. Thus ends our reading, and now we're going to sing Blue Boat Home, which is 1064 in the Teal book, or the words are right in your order of service. And stand if...
As you're willing and able.
As you're willing and able, yeah. In spirit and soul.
Low below me I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean. Still my day and heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun, my soul, and moon, my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, the waking away by the lights of the heavens in a beautiful blue boat hands upholding me, hailed a great and me on. Great the infinite sea below me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
Now is the time to share joys and concerns that are close to your heart. And you can put a stone in the water as you share. Please come up.
I'm Judy Hadrick, and this is a stone of sorrow and concern for the Gerstle family who live 2 houses down. I just learned of my friend's mother's death this morning in the Globe, Nancy Gerstle, and who lived here in Needham and grew up here in this town. I just wanted to give us a stone in the water of condolence to her and her family.
Hi, I'm Ginger Newcomb. My overwhelming feeling this morning is one of joy, and I love singing about my blue boat home because I just came back from a wonderful vacation. Everything worked. The plane kept flying. The ferry kept sailing. And I had a marvelous, wonderful time, and I'm just so grateful that I've lived long enough to do that, and that I have friends and family that support me and share it with me. Thank you.
I'm Jen Duhamel, she, her. I've been doing physical therapy for my balance. I don't have the reflex. If you stumble or start to trip, I'll just fall down. But my sideways is going well, and if I have my assisted device, forward is good, but I don't have the backwards one yet, but it's a big improvement, so I'm happy about that. And then I have a concern for my niece. She's 28, and my great niece is 4.5. They're in a pretty serious domestic violence situation in Providence, and they were living with my mom but had to move out, and she's staying with her friend for probably at least the last month. She's talked to everybody, the detectives and the police, and she talked to the prosecutor this week, and there's multiple warrants, and she found out from the prosecutor she can go to family court and file for sole custody and some other stuff, so she's doing that. So I just hope that she can remain safe, because when you leave the abuser, that's generally the most dangerous time. And since I'm up here and she's down there, and I helped to raise her, and we're very close, so I just pray that she continues to be safe.
Hi, I'm Ann Barrett, and I have two things I'm happy about. David and I celebrated our 40th anniversary last weekend with a very nice trip to Lake Winnipesaukee. That was fun. And my cousin Jennifer Connors has finished her chemo for breast cancer. So we're happy about that.
I find it a little tricky to have my back to you. But Ted in particular, I guess I was really happy to see you have the chalice lighting, Ed Lane. Ed Lane and Helen were very, very dear close friends of mine. I was at their wedding 40 years ago, and they were my best friends, and my husband's best friends. And when my husband Ron died, Ed led the service. And I also remember them wearing purple at their wedding. However, when Ron died, Ed led the service. And he said, "My best friend, Ron Shepard, has died." And I loved him for that.
I need to bring a mic over to Buffy. Can I bring this
Or
one?
Or take this one. This is the portable.
Thank you. I'm Claire Galkowski, she, her, and I am joyful that we are here on such a beautiful, beautiful morning in a circle. I love this. And my husband Jan is here, and it's so nice to see everybody.
I have two celebrations to announce. Karl Heinz turned 79 today, and Betty Aponte will turn 80 on Friday. So we have two celebrations in our family.
What's that?
We'll do something for Karl, Betty.
Oh, yes, yes.
Hello, my name is Ross Donald, and I have two things to say. Judy MacArthur Davidson, who is my mother's sister, is 97 in Jacksonville and is in hospice care and comfortable and surrounded by friends and family. The other reason I'm here is I wanted to hear what Ted had to say about the survey he's been conducting. And it was, and also because I read an article that said basically that individuals are influenced by those they associate with. And while that might be obvious, in that I have become, for a variety of reasons, less engaged with the First Parish and more engaged in my new, well, after 13 years of living in a public housing community, I can say that I'm a better person for being here, but also influenced and sympathetic by those tenants of Lyndon Chambers' housing project, which houses elderly and disabled, and generally people that are more troubled than we are. We say Black Lives Matter, they say more universally all lives matter, and then we get into an argument with them, sort of a holier than thou attitude. We're going to tell them what the facts are. In any case, there is a we versus them dynamic that leads me to want to have somebody write an article about the psychopathy of housing redevelopment. Thank you.
I'll put one one more stone in for all the joys and sorrows that are unspoken in our hearts. So glad to be with you today.
Mindful of these shared celebrations and heartfelt concerns, and for the quiet aches and swells of heart that remain unspoken, we pause to be touched and to feel the heart of others. Within the attentive silence, we remember where and who we are and set our intentions on a loving course. For friends whose journey is long or difficult, or for those whose path has become lighter, for family with whom our hearts beat in unison. For all this and so much more, we pause in reverent silence to reflect, remember, and connect. So this is the interactive portion. If you nodded off, now is the time to come back. The advantage of a circle is we can see you if you nod off. Closer. Thank you. So in February of 2020, just as the pandemic was about to get started, a nonprofit called the Fetzer Institute released a report on spirituality in America. There's a link to it in our order of service you want. I actually printed it out. It cost me a whole printer cartridge because there's a lot of colored pages. If anybody would like it, you're welcome to this. First come, first serve after the service. It was fascinating. It is a fascinating report. It's, of course, high level. It's, of course, too generalized. There's no path. You'll read this and go off on a path, but I think it's helpful in framing some of the questions about spirituality, which I should say they never define. Sorry, Tony. But in a way, what they do is they talk about, they sort of categorize responses in 10 different types. But what I thought we could do here is to use a few of the questions in the Fetzer study to see what do we think about spirituality. You know, my premise here is this is an important part of what we do here at First Parish, and do we have this conversation? This will be short because this is a short service, but I thought it might begin a conversation. So I'd like to start simply with a poll. How many here think of themselves in some way as spiritual? How many think of yourself in some way as religious? It's interesting, isn't it? There's a difference between those two. 40 years ago, say, there wasn't a difference, perhaps. And so I think it's the difference in those two is a really fascinating one for us going forward. So I think we probably reflect, the Fetzer Institute, by the way, 70% of their respondents, which weren't clearly, they weren't polling a lot of UUs, were 70% were spiritual and religious. Were spiritual only. 3% were religious only. By the way, in 2012, I did this poll, and the exact same poll, and 2 people raised their hand that were religious but not spiritual. I can't remember who the second one was, but the first one was Ed Lane. And right in the middle, from the pulpit, I said, "Can I talk to you about that after the service? What does that mean?" And he was very, of course, insightful about it. To continue on the questions, now I'd like to make it a little bit more interactive. Perhaps asking first to you, any one of you can raise your hand and offer. We have a traveling mic. What is your sense of spirituality? How do you experience it? Anybody want to be brave enough to offer that up?
I guess I would like a definition, or your definition, of religious.
We're talking about spirituality here, right? I'm trying to dodge the question. I do want to focus on spirituality. To me, religious is as ill-defined. From its roots, it means to bind oneself again to something, religio. And I think the question it begs is, to what are you binding yourself? I would say anyone who wants to consider themselves as a UU as religious, they could be binding themselves to the principles of the UU organization. And there's a discipline, I think, behind it, and a commitment of binding, and it's renewing that commitment.
I'd just like to redo my hand raise. Me too.
Just interestingly, the Wellesley Congregational Church has, in an effort to grow their congregation and attract new members, downplayed their dogma, downplayed their religiosity, and upplayed their spirituality and connection to life.
Fascinating.
On this matter of definitions, I recall a person asked me one time whether I was Catholic or not. I don't know where she ever came up with that question, but my response was, about some things.
I too went to Andover Newton and got my MDiv and had the opportunity to visit many UU churches and belonged to some before I went to school, and really did not like the ones that downplayed religiosity, the ones that talked about bunnies and things like that at Easter, or the ones that told funny stories at Christmas, because I felt like that was really dishonorable and doing a real disservice to one of our principles, which is we honor the Judeo-Christian roots from which we come. And when I came here, that's one of the things that I really liked, was that we honor those rituals of many religions, of the Hebrew or the Jewish tradition and the Christian tradition. We don't water it down. We honor everybody, and if people are uncomfortable with that, we discuss it. Because I am a self-proclaimed theist, but I don't feel uncomfortable being that here. I don't feel like people are downing their nose at me. And I can say God here, and no one gives me a dirty look. So I really appreciate being here.
I absolutely agree with that. And what I love about this church is its inclusivity and its recognition of many religions, and also it's kind of a validation of other religions. That, you know, I think that people have a religious spirit that's inherent, and it just manifests differently depending on your denomination. And I don't think you can deny that. And I happen to, you know, come from a Catholic tradition, and I don't have anything to do with the Catholic Church anymore, but I think that churches in general are parts of our roots, and that should be honored, you know, whatever that root is.
I have a comment.
Great.
I was talking to someone about spirituality, and for her, music is, and I was saying for me, walking in nature is. So I don't necessarily look for that in. I mean, I get it every day, walking, taking walks, but. Okay. Anybody else?
I was just thinking about this, just came to me. My husband, Ron, never came to church and wasn't grown up with church. I don't think either of us used the word church because I grew up Jewish. So, but I consider him, that he was a very spiritual person without a church. Church meant nothing to him. And as some of you may know, he worked in Uganda, he worked in Roxbury very seriously and very deeply. And that was his religion. And it had nothing to do with church. My children came here, and I'm not sure that they could define what it is to be Unitarian Universalist. They do not go to church, which I'm sad about. They celebrate many religions in the sense that they light the candles at Kwanzaa. But I think in particular my son would have a hard time saying what it is to be a Unitarian Universalist. He came through coming of age, all of that. He always jokes, I don't know if any of you remember, the ungame. You remember, where no one wins. And he jokes a lot about, that's what Unitarian Universalism is, the ungame. So I regret that they don't consider themselves more religious, but they probably consider themselves spiritual.
I always thought of religious as being tied to because of my background, a Christian church and believing all the fine print and following the rules. To me, that has kind of been religious. But whereas spirituality, to me, seems more like the individual's response to the universe, love, something bigger than our little lives here. That's it. Thanks.
I just have a very quick follow-up to what Jackie said. My son defined Unitarianism as the place where Mother's Peace Day and Earth Day are more important than Christmas and Easter.
One more?
Thanks, Gail. I didn't raise my hand for either spiritual or religious, maybe because I don't understand what the words actually mean, but given Tad's definition of religion, or was it Tad? To be tied to something, I guess I'd have to say I am. I would say I identify as a UU now, having grown up Catholic. I gave that up, so I guess I would have to say that given that that's how I think of myself in the world, and when I meet somebody in my circles, I often meet other UUs in the circles that I travel around outside of church, and it always makes me feel like I have a connection. So I guess in that way, I guess I am religious. This whole spiritual thing, you said they can't even define it in the book, so I just really can't say whether I am. Maybe so, but interesting question. Thank you, Tad.
So I'm going to cut it there. I'm sorry. This is fantastic. More needs to be said. And Amy and I have been talking about having, forums in the fall that would enable conversations like this. Okay. Thank you, Peter. That was terrific. More to come. But this is the time in our service when we, the modern stewards of this church, offer to give what we can to build and sustain the world we envision. For the entire summer, our plate collection will be divided equally between First Parish in Needham and the Needham Community Council, which is a local nonprofit that runs, among other things, our local food pantry. Whether you are here in Parish Hall or watching from home and would like to donate today's offering, you can use one of the three methods shown in the order of service. Thank you for everything you were able to give and for the help and support to sustain the congregation and the vital work of our community partners. Please take a few moments now to give what you can and know it will be gratefully received. The ushers, if there are any, could can right.
I went down to the river to pray, studying about that good old way. And who shall wear the starry crown? Good Lord, show me the way. Oh, sisters, let's go down, come on down. Oh, sisters, let's go down, down to the river to pray. Thank you, Judy. So the Fetzer publication did, as I said, report on many forms and definitions of spirituality, categorizing them in many of the ways that we just did. I'd mentioned there are 10 or 12 different categories: connection to other people, being in nature, peace. Many said a belief in a higher power. But the framing they brought out that particularly resonated with me is the following. Spirituality is the relationship between people's inner selves and their outer experiences and actions. The Fetzer report expanded on this in the introduction as they kind of, summarize the report. And I quote, "Our deepest levels of freedom and agency are spiritual, and we are becoming more aware that our inner and outer lives cannot be separated. Through the study, we've learned that spirituality is linked to our deepest identities and to our personal fulfillment, and simultaneously provides a profound agency to build the common good. Strengthening a living bridge between our inner and outer lives is the key to both personal and societal flourishing." I found that profound, and it resonated with me, and I want to build on it a little bit and use that dynamic, that inner-outer dynamic, which Fetzer points out are so highly correlated, to reflect back on the three dynamics I mentioned earlier. So the first related, I'll go back in reverse order, on social action. One of the things that's interesting is the degree to which this report found that spirituality correlated directly to engagement with the community and things that matter. They have graphs on it that show the more spiritual you are, the more likely you are to actually be engaged
issues of social justice. So, and of course, there's a false dichotomy, this social action versus spirituality. I didn't actually mean to present it that way. The interesting dichotomy to me is, where's our balance? And I think what can happen is we have our attention, our communal attention is a finite resource. And to the extent that we dial up our social action, are we doing that at the expense of our internal orientation? And I don't have an answer to that. I just want to raise in fact, I want to actually advocate for looking for more balance, more spiritual content and discussions, because I think in a way those fuel our social action. Ideally, our convictions are internal. So we first ought to, be able to touch those before we actually engage externally. The second dynamic was about values, sort of the liberal values versus liberal doctrine. And really, this isn't a critique of the values that we talk about, but it's how they're conveyed and how we engage with them. And again, I think of this as a little bit of a balance, because when we receive messages in any context here at First Parish, for them to really be appreciated, there needs to be some resonance. There needs to be some prevenient internal place that resonates with the message. But if the values are stated in a way that's presuming or imperative, it almost cuts off that resonance. And the way to balance that is to make sure that we've tilled the soil, so to speak, that we've created the ground with enough worship-oriented internal focus that makes us more open and available to these values. The third, I was going to say, Mark Nepo has a quote on this. Mark Nepo wrote a book called The Book of Awakening, wonderful poet and spiritual thinker. And we heard his quote earlier, but his quote here is, "You must meet the outer world with your inner world, or existence will crush you." And then there's care. Care, as we talked about, is a part of our DNA. And as it relates in this context, I think care as a verb is all the things we do. Gail and Buffy and Janet and Rick, everybody, all the things that are done as a verb. But care is also a noun. As a noun, it's like compassion or love or affirmation. And I think as a noun, it's a spiritual concept. It begins first internally. And so, as that one quote said from one of the interviewees, there is a sense of the world is getting more anxious, more stressed, there's more tension, more polarity. And I wonder, and I don't have the answer to this, how we can embody care as a noun so that when people come to First Parish, and as you've said, they feel welcomed, they feel accepted, and care is sort of implicit in our environment. I think we do that to some extent, but I think we might want to be really conscious and explicit about that. So there's an old, an ancient saying that I just heard about and immediately foisted on the task force, but I think it applies here. A poor farmer grows weeds, a good farmer grows crops, a master farmer grows soil. I think what we're talking about is enriching the soil of our community in a way that will produce these remarkable values, stances, positions, and actions. But that soil is spiritual, my contention is. And as we sort of refurbish our spiritual home, the foundation is spiritual. May it be so. So now we're going to have the unison chalice lighting.
Chalice extinguishing.
Extinguishing.
Says I'm doing that.
Okay, good.
Okay, so you're going to read it and I'll extinguish?
Okay, sure. In unison. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, nor the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
So I'm going to do a hymn, and I think the you referenced here can refer to God or the universe or nature, whatever is right for you. The words are there. If you want to join me, you can, or join me on the chorus. You'll learn it by the second time around. You have given me the melody as it poured forth from my heart. You have blessed me with the meter as it beat through my veins. As I walk with you and listen, your words come to me. Oh, blessed are we this day. Life bursts forth from the seed, roots go stretching down to draw their strength from the soil. Upward grows the plant, always reaching toward the hot, beating sun. Oh, blessed are we this day. Love bursts forth from our hearts. We plant our feet upon the earth to draw our strength. Open wide our arms, reaching toward the sky. We're flooded with light. Oh, blessed are we this day. Hallelujah.
For Presence by John O'Donohue. Awaken to the mystery of being here and enter the quiet immensity of your own presence. Have joy and peace in the temple of your senses. Receive encouragement when new frontiers beckon. Respond to the call of your gift and the courage to follow its path. Let the flame of anger free you of all falsity. May warmth of heart keep your presence aflame. May anxiety never linger about you. May your outer dignity mirror an inner dignity of soul. Take time to celebrate the quiet miracles that seek no attention. Be consoled in the secret symmetry of your soul. And may you experience each day as a sacred gift woven around the heart of wonder. Amen.